Hi Woodland Hills, this is Mrs. Mankey, and
Okay.
I am here at Edgewater Community to help celebrate Veterans Day. And we have Mr. Nichols here to share with us some of his experiences of being in the Vietnam War. So, thank you for talking with us. What was your branch of service?
I was in the Navy, U.S. Navy, and I was commissioned officer in the Navy. I graduated, went through Iowa State University and ROTC, and when I graduated from the Navy, I was commissioned an ensign. This is my ensign picture here. And then after that, I went to a ship, the USS Mount McKinley, which I have a picture of here. You can see it. And the Mount McKinley was an HEC, and it was a communication ship, and I was in the engineering department. And I first met my ship. I flew to the Philippines, went to the ship, and I went from the Philippines to Da Nang Harbor in Vietnam, and that was my association with the Vietnam War. We spent a lot of time in Da Nang Harbor, and on board we had an admiral who directed the amphibious war. And that's the war where the ships would land Marines, they'd go ashore, and they'd come back to the ship and go. And so throughout the war. And my job aboard the ship was, I was in engineering, and basically in engineering, runs the mechanics of the ship. We make sure that there's water, electricity, air conditioning, cooling, make sure the ship goes, and those type of things. So I had a group of men that went around, did repairs and maintenance and those type.
Okay. Was engineering something that you were interested in when you started at Iowa State? Is that how you got into that?
Actually, I was an ag education major at Iowa State, but part of it was ag engineering. I took a couple courses in that. Plus, I grew up on a farm, so I was used to mechanical events and machinery and things. So it was a good fit, and I spent my first shift. I was in engineering there, and it worked out well. And I spent previously mentioned, it's hot over in the Western Pacific, very hot. We made sure that our air conditioning ran. When the air conditioning was down, people's attitudes dropped major. So one of my jobs is to make sure that the generator ran, so that all the air conditioning aboard ship ran well, and it worked. Worked well. So that was.
You were very important then for the ship to make everyone happy.
So as a line officer too, I was in charge of driving the ship when the captain was asleep or doing something else. So those type of things I did too. So
what was your training like for doing this?
ROTC is probably one of the nicest way to get a commission. You don't have the boot camp type atmosphere. What you have is you take a course each semester of college, and then you also once or twice a week you march around the campus and do those type, wear your uniform once a week, and also you do marching and that type, and then you go directly from that to a commissioned officer, as opposed to OCS or the Naval Academy, where there's quite a bit of rigorous physical training, which ROTC has some of it, but not as much. And we do in the between your sophomore and junior year, you go to training, and your freshman and sophomore, and your junior and senior year go to board ship and have some training there to get used to what. But as a farm person from Iowa, my first event with water was my senior year when I went in college, when I went aboard ship and learned about it.
What are some of your memories about being on the ship?
Well, it's one, we had good camaraderie with the other people. We put in long days. I mean, you work 10, 14-hour days. A lot of camaraderie. You have a area where you get together and you play games. You eat together. You go on liberty with your friends. So we were there towards the middle of the war, and so it was you know, a busy time. We
About how many people were on your ship?
there probably about 300.
Wow.
It was you know, a good sized ship, and so this particular ship, I was on a couple other ships. One was later on was an amphibious troop transport ship, and that we had about 300 Marines and 300 ship's company on there also. So it's big, but it's you know, it's not. It was a slower Navy as opposed to the destroyers and the carriers and those types. A lot of times what you see in the on TVs and movies and that type. Yes.
You didn't have planes landing or anything on yours?
Just a helicopter
Just
on the back.
helicopters.
And I rode the helicopter a few times, and the pilots were excellent. You could hardly feel it when you took off or landed, and
Yeah.
it was very nice. Communications, this was a long time before we had any internet or anything like that. Or today they actually Skype back and forth and talk to their family and things.
Yeah.
Then we sent letters.
Right.
And once in a while in port, you could have a very expensive telephone call.
Wow.
But for the most part, it was letters. And you sent a letter out, and aboard ship, it take maybe a month to get home.
Wow.
Anywhere from 2 weeks to a month. And then they would send a letter back, and we would either pick that up. That letter would either come to us when we got to a port, or sometimes when you replenished underway, when two ships came alongside, and they transferred food and fuel back and forth. They also had mail bags back and forth, and that's when we had mail call right after that, and you'd run down to see if you got a letter from your your family or whatever. And that was neat. And I think mail call's been a part of the military forever until the internet showed up and Skyping and stuff.
Yeah. Well, I know you brought some other things to share with us.
Oh,
Other pictures and other.
I spent 20 years in the Navy, so this is my final as a commander getting out of the Navy. Another ship I was on was the again, these are all Liberty Hall ships.
Okay.
And so these are the 3 ships I was on. Whenever you go on a ship, similar to what you have in high school, you get a yearbook every year. For each time you go on a cruise or something, you'll get a cruise book, and then you go through, and it shows the pictures of the people that were on the cruise and things you did and that type of thing. And I was on two Western Pacific cruises, and then I was on 1 Mediterranean cruise. And then part of my 20 years, I spent 2 tours in the Pentagon.
Oh, okay.
And so, and sometimes when you finish up a duty station, they'll give you a plaque telling you the dates you were there and that type. And so this is one of my times I was in the Pentagon working there. So, and also the Navy was good to me too, because they allowed me to go to graduate school for a year, and I attended George Washington University and got an MBA. And so that was so the Navy treated me well, and there was a lot of separation, but it was also a good time.
Okay. Well, great. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us your experiences, and thank you for your service, and happy Veterans Day.
Okay, thank you.